Shock and alarm were my immediate reactions. It was entirely inevitable that anyone landing on that island would be killed. That has been the history, and he knew it.
An American tourist identified as John Allen Chow, 27 years old.
In November this year, a 27-year-old American missionary was killed on the North Sentinel Island while illegally attempting to make contact with a tribe that has aggressively resisted outsiders. John Allen Chow was trying to preach Christianity to the Sentinelese tribespeople. There is only elementary information available about the tribe, believed to be the last of the pre-Neolithic tribes in the world.
He went anyway, and my alarm was that there would be efforts, as we saw right away, to retrieve the body, and that this could lead to further harm. There are two ways of retrieving the body. You go in with arms and you either kill them, or some of you get killed, or you start this process of pacification, which is called so-called friendly contact. And friendly contact is not friendly. It is like it is a process by which hostilities are calmed down to a point where the people can be tamed and they can interact with you in peace. And that introduces a series of events that eventually leads to massive death, destruction, decay of the people. Pacification involves basically bribery. You teach them to want things that you have and that they can learn to enjoy, because currently none of the things that we have are things that they need. They're doing fine without us. But if we can teach them to want things like red cloth, which is one of the things that the Jarawa were taught to use, then you create a need. And the British had a very specific means of pacification by introducing quote-unquote artificial wants. And this meant, provide them with goodies that they can only get by interacting with you. So there's this very standard process of pacification that was developed at least 100 years ago, or perhaps even earlier, and it involves bribery. That process has been followed on the other Andaman Islands with the other Andaman tribes to disastrous effect. So once you have friendly contact with them, then they encounter germs that, because of long isolation, they have never encountered before. Then they start to die. This was a process that reduced the numbers of the Great Andamanese from several thousands, at least between 5,000 to 8,000, to 19 in a span of a century. Now the numbers are a little more because they have increased, but the danger is always there. And with people like the Sentinelese, there's no way you could get effective medical care. It would destroy them. And if the diseases don't destroy them, then there are other influences that would destroy them, as has been seen time and time again with indigenous peoples encountering outsiders.
Of the 4 remaining Andaman tribes, the Great Andamanese, Onge, Jarawa, and the Sentinelese are considered most reclusive. The survival of the Sentinelese in an area approximately 60 square kilometers in isolation for tens of millennia is seen as miraculous.
What we know now from genetic studies of other Andaman peoples is that they are directly descended from the first modern humans to emerge out of Africa. So that happened sometime maybe 60,000 years ago. The people, they moved into South Asia, moving along the coasts, south along to the tip, and then up north again. And eventually they reached the Andaman Islands. Some of them stayed, these are the Andamanese, others kept moving further south. What we also know is that they seem to have been genetically isolated for almost all of this time. They reached the islands perhaps 50,000, 40,000 years ago. So far as we know, they haven't interacted in peace with other peoples in all of this time. That has preserved their genetic uniqueness, it has also preserved their isolation, and it has been key to their survival. This is their survival strategy. The Andamanese have always been known to kill anyone who lands on their shores.
In 1858, repelling bows and arrows with gunfire, British officials established a penal colony on South Andaman Island, now the town of Port Blair. To pacify the hostile natives, the colonizers captured and held some in so-called Andaman homes. At these homes, guards raped Andamanese women, injecting syphilis into a population that had no immunity to the germs that outsiders carry. Epidemics ravaged the Great Andamanese, comprising 10 tribes of the South, North, and Middle Andaman Islands. Towards the end of the 19th century, Maurice Vidal Portman, a British Royal Naval officer, the colonial administrator of the islands, many accounts say, started attempts to violently pacify the islanders.
Curiosity can be a very dangerous thing. People would dissect animals live because they were curious about what was inside them. The scientific temperament is not necessarily a benign temperament. And we have to remember that anthropology was developed as a colonial tool. In fact, the very first kind of modern anthropologist was Radcliffe Brown, who studied the Great Andamanese while they were declining. And to him, they were just subjects of interest. There was no kind of capacity for empathy. Portman, who was the administrator, who really tamed a lot of the Andamanese, he started the process of decay in a massive way by, basically pacifying the Onge and the Jarawa, for example. So we have to remember that anthropology is a colonial enterprise, or was. There are certainly some anthropologists these days who are very ethical and who are fighting on the side of these peoples. But that hasn't always been the case. And even the anthropological curiosity has to be tamed in order to protect these people. This happened in around 1995. I was working then as an editor with Scientific American. This is a job I have gone back to. When a journalist friend, an Indian journalist, told me about this island, and I was really excited. There's this island that where if you approach it, people shoot at you and you get killed. To me, that was amazing in this modern world, that there should be such a people. And I didn't know anything about the Andamanese. I had read about the Indian freedom fighters being incarcerated in cellular jail, and when they escaped, these so-called savages were killing them. That was the only thing I knew. So I went initially out of curiosity, and I kept going back. And the more I learned to understand the people and empathize with their plight and to see not them as the aggressors, but us. I did not interact with the Sentinelese, but I did interact somewhat with the assimilated tribes like the Great Andamanese, the Onge. I had one brief encounter with the Jarawa. This was a time when they had just started coming out of the forest. It was already clear that it was disastrous. They were starting to get common colds. Even the common cold proved to be fatal to them. These are extremely dangerous and thoughtless moves, entirely in keeping with this massive development plan that the government of India has for the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The Nicobar Islands, which are further south, are being developed as a naval base to be mobilized in any future confrontation with China. And for that purpose, there are massive installations planned not only on the Nicobars, but also on the Andamans, including the railway line. There is no consideration here of what even the people of the Indian population on the islands needs, let alone what the indigenous population needs. Their wishes are being completely ignored. So, for example, there has been a long-standing Supreme Court order from 2002 saying that the existing road through the Jarawa Reserve needs to be closed and that alternate shipping routes need to be developed. The road remains open. In fact, it is being reinforced with bridges. Travel across the road is getting easier. I would say that the Indian government has contempt not only for indigenous rights, but for human rights as a whole.
This is a tribe which has been completely isolationist. How did he get over there? And is there any ground to suggest that some of these tribes need to be reintegrated?
I think that's a completely nonsensical debate. There is no debate. The debate, the side that says they should be brought into the mainstream, etc., is completely ignorant. And yeah, I would say it suffers from this very racist colonialist mindset that says we know better than they do what is good for them. And that's completely unacceptable. There is no debate.
Love your morning fix? Help support our journalism. Subscribe to Scroll Plus using the link in the description.